And I was like, wow, if Ben can do it, I could do it. So I used to like even like when I was in college, I DM Ben and he was gracious enough to give me some advice. So I think I was looking maybe like more at some people that had similar paths than me. There was another guy that worked at ExxonMobil, that was a chemical engineer, but was working in data. And I was like, oh, how did you, like, I was kind of learning from them and what career paths they had.
What's up, data folks, and welcome to the Data Creators Club podcast, where we interview data professionals and learn from them. And today we have someone which has been doing a lot of content, especially on YouTube recently. And he's just friendly and kind. Whenever I see one of his video, I don't know, I feel like really calm and reassured that like I'm in good hands. So welcome, Avery. I'm super pumped to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be on the show. Thanks for the kind introduction.
So, could you tell us a bit more about your career journey so far and how you get into data?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm originally a chemical engineer. That's what I studied in college in the United States, which doesn't have a whole lot to do with data. But after like my first semester, I was like, oh my gosh, I hate this chemical engineering thing. What am I going to do? I don't like it at all. And anyways, kind of through a fluke thing, I was working in a place that had a data scientist. It was a small company, only like 12 people, but one of the 12 people was a data scientist. And he was just really cool. And what he did sounded really cool. And it was really important for our company. And I was like, oh, wow, this guy's so interesting. What he does is so interesting. I was just in the lab as a lab technician. And eventually that data scientist quit, like after 2 months of me being there. And we couldn't find another data scientist for a long time. And so I was like, you know what? How hard can this be? I'm going to take a stab at it. And so I kind of dove into the data world and started doing machine learning and analytics, and have kind of just kept going since. I've worked as a data scientist at ExxonMobil. And then more recently, I've been doing my own consultancy firm and then running a couple online courses where I help people become, data analysts and data scientists.
What's the timeline? When did you actually start?
So let's think. So that was in 2016 when I was working for that company. So 2016 was probably like the first time I ever heard the term like data scientist and data science. And then in 2019, that's when I graduated and I was full-time data scientist at ExxonMobil.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting because you're not the first one that come from another background, and usually I suspect like those people started into those timeline, right? Because there were really few resources online. Actually, as you mentioned, the term was pretty new. So that's actually a good question. Like you basically learn on the job. But like what was
Yeah.
the resource back then for you to
Oh,
upskill?
yeah. It was actually a lot harder than it is now for sure. There's just like not as many online resources, or maybe I was just dumb and I couldn't find them. That's definitely a possibility. But for me, I was lucky because I was still in college. So like, for instance, we did actually have, it was the first semester they had ever, no, the second semester they'd ever taught it, an intro to data science course that I took while I was in school. I took a statistics class for engineers. So that was another class inside of school. So I was lucky to have the university around where I could still take some related classes. But outside of school, it was, I hit the library so hard. I'd go to the library and I just get these huge textbooks, specifically data science for like chemists and chemical engineers, because that's like a very niche
Yeah.
content. And I would just read those, and it was super boring, but I learned a lot of stuff from those books.
Okay, you had the library, right? One side. And so what was online at that time? What were the
Man,
resources?
that's a good question. I don't even. Oh, I'll say this. I was on LinkedIn a little bit, definitely not as much as I was today. But Ben Taylor, another
Yeah.
LinkedIn content creator and former executive at Data Robot, he actually went to my school for a PhD. So he attended the University of Utah in chemical engineering. So I was
Okay.
like, but he was working. He was, I think at the time he was starting his company that he ended up selling to Data Robot. And I was like, wow, if Ben can do it, I could do it. So I used to like even like when I was in college, I DM Ben and he was gracious enough to give me some advice. So I think I was looking maybe like more at some people that had similar paths than me. There was another guy that worked at ExxonMobil, that was a chemical engineer, but was working in data. And I was like, oh, how did you, I was kind of learning from them and what career paths they had. I honestly don't remember doing that much stuff online, if I'm perfectly honest. I guess the things I did do would be like Stanford machine learning classes with
Hmm.
Andrew. I don't want to say his last name,
Yeah.
but like he's very famous, right? I'd
Yeah,
watch
it
all
is.
those. That's probably like the one online resource that I use. I used to like listen to those on my walks to school. So kind of funny because those videos are really old now.
So it's pretty cool because you're doing like you did what a lot of like students are now doing on LinkedIn, right? It's like reaching out to ask for advice. But that was pretty early, and you had the opportunity to find actually someone which was close to you in person, I mean, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
that's probably easier. Nice. So you have now put some resource online. What pushed you to actually do that?
It's a good question. I think it was just like, so I ended up getting a master's degree while I worked in data analytics, and it was a mixed bag experience in getting my master's. I got it online from Georgia Tech, and there's some really good things about the program, and there's some things that I didn't like as much. And so I thought I was like, you know what, like I could maybe have a few courses that to learn data science the way that I would have liked it. And so I think I just started with a like almost like a workshop. It was like a week long workshop. I think it was 2 hours a night, which in
Okay.
hindsight, that was a lot for the
Yeah.
people that joined. But I gave like a crash course on all things like data science to maybe like 20 people. And that was like the first course I ever ran. And then I started teaming up with Kate Strachny, who's another LinkedIn content creator. I built 2 courses for her academy. And I was like, hey, this is kind of fun. I'm kind of into this. And so I started building my own courses. But I guess at this point, I'd been posting on LinkedIn for a year, and I kind of forget that that counts as content. So that's probably where I actually started was actually with LinkedIn and creating content there.
We touched on a bit about the university, but if we come back, I mean, before, but now, what do you think about the challenge of learning online versus, and what's the pro and cons versus like the standard path at university? Because now there is some degree, right, dedicated to data science. Even I think data engineers, some universities started. So yeah, what's your take on that?
I think obviously there's a lot of pros to learning online. It's typically cheaper. You can typically do it on your own schedule. You're not location bound, stuff like that. There's definitely challenges for sure. Some of them being like engagement. It's just easier like to be engaged when you're in a room of other people and the person who's teaching is in front of you. It's a lot harder to stay dedicated online. It's like a lot more of a commitment to stay motivated. Staying motivated is probably the biggest thing that I've seen. So that's one thing, is like you have to stay committed, stay motivated. The other thing is, and this is one of my gripes I have with like university programs, and I mean maybe not university programs, but let's just say large coding programs. Let's just put it that way. Is a lot of them are auto graded exercises, which can be really good. Like I mean, it's nice to get immediate feedback. It's nice to know, whether you're doing it right or wrong, but it's also not real life. Like there's no one in real life that's ever going to give you an auto gradable work assignment, at least from my experience. And so it's not always the most realistic, but I mean, neither is traditional education. Like even as a chemical engineer, like I was doing the dumbest things by hand that like software just does. So maybe it's not the biggest con or that different than traditional education. But the hardest thing is probably the community and staying motivated.
Yeah. And so I've seen, I tried myself some of the cohorts, where you get into a virtual class. I did that actually for music, not for data.
Oh
But it's
yeah.
quite fun online. Nice experience. Like you share you know, your your work assignments and you have a place to discuss. What do you think about those? About those? Have you experimented one of them?
Yeah. So I'm in a couple online courses. I would say mostly like for business and marketing and stuff like that. Um, I do like the cohort based a little bit more because it does have like everyone in the same boat at the same time type vibes. And one thing that's been successful and part of my community is I have a challenge called 21 Days to Data. It's basically like a 21-day introductory to data analytics, and it's cohort-based, so it starts at the beginning of the month and pretty much ends towards the end. And everyone's posting on as part of the course. You're posting online with like a certain hashtag, and that does breed a lot of community. I think people, it's funny because people don't want to post on LinkedIn; they feel uncomfortable. But after doing this, they really like find their community and a group of people that like enjoy what they're seeing. And so I think there are ways to augment the in-person community experience. So like for instance, with my other course that I do, it's not cohort based, so you can join at any time. But like what I've been using is this like cool app. I don't know if they have this in Germany or anything like that. It's called Volley. It's kind of like Marco Polo, but it's like asynchronous meetings. So I do a lot of video in there, but it's like you send the video message and then I reply with a video message. And so that way, it's not like we're talking face to face, but it's probably the closest thing we have in this day and age to having I guess other than Zoom like this is like face to face, but it's basically asynchronous Zoom. And so there are ways you can augment that experience. But it is hard to recreate that.
Yeah. But still, I think there is a lot of room for improvement, right? It's still early. I believe like the experience will get better. Something I experiment that's like I really love compared to university is that I did like an online paid degree. I think it was nano degree and at Udacity. And I was really impressed that I put like my projects, and because of the time difference with the US, like I put it in the evening, and it's the day on the other side. Literally 8 hours after, I have a complete review on my project, right? Like almost line by line. And that never happened to me at university because it's too big. There is less interaction, and I feel that there is a lot of stuff that you can automate and maybe, I would say offshore on the work of reviewing, maybe that could happen. I don't know if you have any idea on that, like to get like, you were talking about like video, but like feedback on people. How do you scale that actually? Because what's the size of the community? I guess for the moment you can do it yourself, right? But like, how do you see that challenge evolving?
The scaling is an issue with education in general, and different organizations have a different approach. So for example, I help teach the data engineering certificate at MIT, and they have me grade some assignments. They have a team in India grade some assignments, and they have some auto gradable assignments. So their way of scaling is kind of multi-pronged, where they have different people grading different things based off of what's going on. In my program, it's not huge, so I do most of it myself, but it is really hard because I would love to sit down and have like an hour Zoom and like review every single line of someone's code, but I can't do that for like 200 people, right? And so it's a matter of trying to scale that the best I can, and it's definitely difficult. It's difficult because also, like, for instance, even with like universities, like at least when I was getting a chemical engineering degree, your professor's not grading your homework assignments. That's like a TA, right? And so whenever you're trying to scale education, it's difficult to have like the leader or like the lecturer doing all the tasks. It's a hard scale problem for sure.
You put like recently on your YouTube channel, I want to come back on that, 30 projects in 30 days.
Yeah.
Was this a cohort or did you how did you manage to do it? Can you tell us a bit more about the story and why did you do that in the first place? Because that seems like a crazy challenge.
Yeah, for sure. It was. So I personally believe that like the secret to breaking into the data field is having a good portfolio with good projects. Because it's like the evidence that you can do what your resume says you can do. That's like tangible evidence. I love the idea of having a project that like is really relevant to a company, and it's like, wow, this person can actually help us. Like, let's hire them. So I'm a big believer in projects and portfolios. And I try to base all of my content, based on that kind of premise that this is the secret to breaking into the fields. And if you want to break into the fields, the best way, you need to have projects in a portfolio. And so I was like, how can I motivate people / inspire people / train people in a way to like get this message to the masses? And I admittedly, since this is like a creator podcast, I was really inspired by Ryan Trahan's 30-Day Penny series. I don't know if you saw that,
Yeah.
but for those who are listening, a YouTuber named Ryan Trahan went across America, starting with 1 penny from LA to North Carolina in 30 days. And it was such a fun daily series. I made it like part of my routine to watch every day. I was like, man, I want to do that. I was like, how do I do that? And so that was kind of my attempt to do it in a way that, I could, because I'm not a penny guy, I guess, but I'm a data guy. So it was basically some like absurd challenge that was like, if I can do 30 data science projects in 30 days, you can do 1 data science project in 30 days. That was kind of my thought process. And it was a lot of work, but a lot of fun.
Why not actually, but like 30 projects in 60 days? Like why specifically 1 day, 1 project?
I don't know. That's a good question. I guess I wanted it to be dramatic. In hindsight, it probably would have been better to space it out. But now, like, I feel like I've done something that, like, honestly, like no other data scientist has ever done before. And I mean, feel free for anyone to like build 30 projects in 1 day. Like, that'd be dope too. But like I don't know. It's just like it felt like a really interesting challenge that like hadn't been done before. It was definitely really hard, and I think if I would have spaced it out across more time, I could have marketed it a little bit more, because I was and keep in mind that like I also do consulting, and so like it wasn't like my full-time job was making YouTube videos. It was like I had to like find time to coach my students, do my consulting, and then do the YouTube. So it was a big time commitment. So I wish I would have marketed it a little bit better than I did. And I think some of the projects were a little bit rushed. I mean, literally I had to do it in like a couple hours sometimes. But I think there's a lesson in there, because sometimes in life, like, we're too big of perfectionists and we're waiting for, the perfect project, we're waiting for the perfect video. We're trying to like be perfect. And sometimes you just got to get out there and publish what you got. And that's actually better than perfection.
Yeah, I think time pressure, like giving you a time window, is definitely helping, especially for side project, right? There is
Exactly.
no manager that's coming out, or at the next of the sprints, like, where are you, how are you doing with that project? No one sees getting really you accountable. So I think it definitely helps to push things a bit. Like, it's like a 30 hackathons that you did like in 30 days, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it is what it is. Like, the results stand for themselves, and it's good enough.
Can you touch on a bit, according to you, what's the hottest topic in data science right now?
The hottest topic in data science right now. It's so funny. I don't think the hottest topic in data science is actually in data science. I think data science kind of had its hottest girl in school like time, like a couple of years ago, where like everyone was talking about it. It was like the hottest thing. Everyone was stoked about it, like just machine learning, data science stuff in general. Now I think it's cooled off. I think there's still a lot of demand for data analysts and data scientists. Like, I'm not saying that's gone away, but I think like the conversation has probably moved more to like ML ops. So if you can count, I guess that's part of data science. So like ML ops, like the idea of training models quickly and keeping track of them and making sure that they're working correctly. But I'd almost consider ML ops to be part of data engineering. And I think data engineering is kind of having its moment right now where it's the most important thing, and it's people are really excited about it. So I think the hottest thing in data science is either data engineering or ML ops.
Yeah, it's interesting to zoom out, because I think like in ML and like in deep learning project, there was like huge advancement, right? But there is still this barrier if we zooming out. Like, what's the problem? It's like putting those things in production, right? Making it robust enough. And maybe that's like a bit on the neighbor on machine learning. So MLOps and all those things. Yeah, totally agree. So closing slowly, what's next for you?
What's next for me? Yeah, maybe 30 projects in one day. That was just an idea that came on this
But
podcast.
you're aware that there is only 24 hours in a day, right? So
That's true. That I won't do that one for a little while, I guess. But that would be fun. I mean, it would be fun to try to do as many projects as I could in 24 hours. But I need to settle down and chill for a little bit. So yeah, right now it's mostly focusing on delivering good consulting to my biggest consulting client right now. Focusing on um, focusing on just doing my job at MIT, and then really spending a lot of time with my current students inside of my course, just because I want them to get really good data jobs. So I'm spending a lot of time right now just kind of revamped the coaching aspect of my course to the point where I'm doing like personal resume reviews, personal LinkedIn reviews, personal project reviews, personal portfolio reviews. So that's taking a big chunk of my time. But in terms of like content moving forward, for everyone who's listening, I was very inconsistent on YouTube. I'd in beginning of this year, I was like, I want to make YouTube a goal, so I was posting every week. I probably did that for like 2 months, but I didn't really find my content style that I was really interested in. Then I really hadn't posted on YouTube for a couple months before I did this challenge. So I did more YouTube videos, in a month than I probably had done combined before that. So that's like a whole new avenue that I definitely want to be more
nice.
consistent. Maybe a video every month or video every other week, something like that. I still haven't found my content schedule yet, but kind of the same old, just making good LinkedIn content every day, and then branching out more to YouTube because I've become addicted to YouTube over the last like 6 months. Like before, I used it as like a resource. Now I use
Yeah.
it as like my resource and my entertainment. So I'm very addicted to the platform and love seeing awesome YouTubers like you create really polished content. Really inspires me.
Thanks. No, but I mean, I'm feeling exactly the same challenge. Like finding the right schedule. Your voice takes time. There is so much things to do, but you have definitely more flexibility to express yourself, right? You've been putting some thumbnails for your challenge, right?
Yeah, that's
I
true.
love them. So no, I think it's nice. There is more space to express yourself than LinkedIn. So where can you find you? You can do any shameless plug?
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. Shameless plug time. Guys, don't hit pause. Don't hit skip. Just kidding. You can find me on YouTube, Avery Smith, on YouTube. You can find me on LinkedIn, Avery Smith on LinkedIn, and then you can check out my website if you're trying to break into data science and analytics. DataCareerJumpstart.com. Have lots of free resources, free community, free roadmap, free podcast, stuff like that, and then some awesome premier products as well.
Cool. I'll put all the links in the description, so feel free to check out. Every thanks again for joining the podcast. It was really awesome to talk with you about teaching and learning. And I wish you the best. And I guess see you around on YouTube then.
Yeah, hopefully. Let's do a collab sometime. That'd be awesome.